And so it's really more about, finding the signal in the noise. Out of all the content that you're currently running, what is getting the highest engagement? What is it about your brand that resonates with consumers? You can develop an intimate relationship with consumers in a way that's more vibrant than just a static rule book. And so for that, what we do is, we fine tune the models on the brand book and all the brand assets. We have customers create rules, but also, potentially, what are the hard and fast rules, and then what are not. So, if it's a one-off instance, potentially when you can break those rules as well to develop potentially more intimate relationship with the consumer. Yeah, and so that's really what we're focusing
Mhm.
on is these generative experience management platform, building that for brands. So it's less about managing the assets and managing the rules in the brand books, and more about managing the models that power uh, these generative experiences.
Imagine running ads with a model adapting with data and not based on groups of people churning out content. AI agents are subtly reshaping how companies connect with customers. These aren't just automation tools. Think intelligent models transforming brand guidelines into dynamic experiences. Omneky CEO Hikari Senju saw this shift coming in 2018. His vision replaced traditional campaigns with machine learning, which has now become AI agents. No more siloed creative teams, no more long approval cycles. Instead, smart models analyze engagement in real time, generating content that resonates with your customers. My name is Declan Dunn, and I help entrepreneurs, small businesses, and creatives take advantage of AI before it takes advantage of them. And if you have a brand to promote, content to create, listen closely. This is for everyone, not just Fortune 500s. The rise of AI agents allows startups to run campaigns for as little as $100 that would have cost thousands just a few years ago. So don't think bigger budgets. It's about smarter models that turn every brand interaction into a personalized experience. This is so not the old ad game. Hikari shares some surprises, and after all, he was selected Most Visionary Business Leader of 2025 by Enterprise World for a reason. He lets us in on how AI, specifically in advertising, is a growth key for startups, and why the smallest companies may actually have the biggest advantage, and what AI agents are doing now to make that a reality.
And so it's really more about, finding the signal in the noise. Out of all the content that you're currently running, what is getting the highest engagement? What is it about your brand that resonates with consumers? You can see the impact of that based on the higher engagement rates that certain types of content are seeing, certain types of messaging is getting. How do we double down on that messaging to further differentiate you from the marketplace of other products out there that are also, potentially solve a similar problem? And so that's really what it is, we fine tune a model of the customer's brand, and then we optimize it based on data to see, where what about that brand is resonating with consumers in the most engaging and highest return on ad spend ways, and then how do we double down on that, and while testing new ideas to further help this brand grow and get additional exposure. There has to be coherence of the messaging and the imagery. There's a coherent story being told there. And so first, our LLM is fine-tuning the customer's brand. So we trained on the corpus of the customer's, historical content that they've published, or their social media, or
Hmm.
their brand books, and we have a whole brand management page for customers to upload all their brand assets and give it brand rules and
Right.
brand guidelines. What words can you not say? What words can you say when you're generating imagery? What kinds of imagery are you seeking? What are the rules when it comes to, say, displaying your logo that you cannot violate? And so customers kind of assemble all their brand information in one location, which is our brand management page. And then based on that, based on our model fine tuning of that data, we generate, brand relevant product photos, images that are in the style of that brand, copy that's in the style of that brand, to make sure that there is a coherence as customers scale their advertising about what makes that brand unique. Because I think what customers are seeking at this moment as we enter this era of generative AI is, brands are going to come to life, right? LLMs are going to breathe life to brands. Every brand is
Right.
going to become, a character that has, real-time engagement with consumers and develop intimate relationships with consumers. Brands want to make sure that as they're scaling that brand experience, that they're also remaining in control of that, and that that brand experience is consistent across different advertising platforms, across different social platforms, across different display platforms or streaming platforms. That the brand isn't changing its personality every time a consumer engages with that brand. That there's a kind of a context that's kept regarding those different consumer interactions, and that's what we've built with for the brands with our brand management tool, and that then powers the consistent imagery in the copy within the imagery.
Building models instead of scattered ads, ideas, tests that lead to guesswork. It's hard to put down the old ways, the business that AI can do so much better, but we can't afford to be Luddites when it comes to advertising. We've all got to create some form of content to live in the current digital world. What does an IBM executive, an artist, a young robotics explorer, and an adversarial network have in common? Listening to Omneky's origin stories that began in 2018 to find out, seeing how AI could impact advertising, and consider that it's a reality.
Some people are in the right place at the right time, and you kind of see the trends early. And I think I was very lucky. I grew up in Westchester, New York. My grandfather was an executive at IBM. My dad's an artist, and so from a very early age, I had this grew up in an environment full of art and creativity as well as technology. Competed in robotics competitions as a kid, and studied computer science at Harvard with focus on machine learning. And that was just and so when I was a student from 2011 to 2014 at Harvard, I was taking a lot of machine learning courses. I was cross-registered a lot at MIT, and it was there when I saw some of the early generative models, some of the precursors to generative adversarial networks, that I got very excited about the space. And particularly the reason why I got very excited was because of an idea of an AI or technology being artistic and being creative and generating art. I found, like, even the possibility of that I found incredibly exciting. And so that's what got me hooked in generative AI is through generative art. I started an ed tech company in college. It was acquired, led marketing at the acquirer. And so as they're running marketing, that I saw this particular application of using generative AI to solve this difficult problem in advertising, which is how do you create effective content? More than half of marketing budgets are wasted every year on ineffective content. Um, the quality of the design, the quality of the creative is the biggest impact in terms of sales, driving of sales. And so this is, the biggest impact area and also one of the biggest sources of waste when it comes to marketing. And yet, it's still kind of people are throwing darts in the dark and trying to like, kind of like that was what got me to start the company in 2018.
What drove you to just focus strictly on the creative, which I think is like a really smart focus?
First off, it was the biggest lever the step change that this technology would enable. And I think as a startup, you want to pick your bets carefully. And I think that's a really great analogy, which is every time there's a new technology, one has to imagine what does this technology give you incredible leverage to do? That was like it's an order of magnitude different than the previous way of doing something. And if it's like say 10 times better in terms of providing leverage, is it really an opportunity to do for a startup? Because if it is just incremental productivity boost, then it kind of favors incumbents who have those distribution advantages. And so the area that I saw with generative AI giving incredible leverage to startups and opportunity for startup was in the creative. And yes, we could have built a better mousetrap in terms of distribution, but there are strong incumbents in that space. It's kind of hard to break into. It's competitive. And so I saw the biggest opportunity, kind of the blue ocean opportunity, by focusing on the creative. There's that. I think the other thing is just my personal interest. Again, going back to my interest in generative AI and generative artwork, just being personally really interested in
Yeah.
the generation of content. A lot of our edge is really not just about generating the creative content, but linking it to the data from the distribution platform. So what types of content is having and seeing higher click-through rates and return on ad spend based on the various ad networks and ad platforms. How do we incorporate that data into the generation process? It's been a kind of core focus. It's data-driven content generation.
Generative experiences and data driven content generation. That doesn't sound like ads and all the old Mad Men shows that we used to watch. The playbook from 3 years ago might as well be ancient history. Today, brands aren't just managing content, they're creating experiences through AI agents that learn and adapt in real time. Think of it as your brand's digital nervous system. Your brand is a living model that learns from every interaction, shapes content based on real time data, and builds connections. It's about understanding your brand's core identity, feeding your AI agents the right data. You got to make the model work, and letting them optimize your customer experience across every touch point. So do you integrate like that kind of fine tuning? What would you ask a prospective customer to really bring to the table?
I published a blog post recently on LinkedIn called Generative Experience Management. And kind of the old world that we used to live in was the world of digital asset management, right? So it's a static brands, static assets, organizing the permissioning of the various assets. But we're going to live in a world in the future where all the assets are going to be generated on the fly in real time, right, based on personal data, based on what's trending in the news, based on all the new learnings that the brand is constantly getting from various consumer engagements. And so there's going to be a layer on top of the assets, the models that are generating all this content now. And so in that world, you need a tool for managing these brand models, these generative models that will power the brand assets, not just putting brand assets in various folders and changing the permissioning of those assets. And so what is required when it comes to training these models is understanding, in a very deep way, what is it about the brand that is sacrosanct. And to your point, today a brand is fairly static. It is usually like a couple pages of a brand guideline or a brand book, and it's not very flexible, and it's kind of a little bit stodgy, and it doesn't result in the most engaging consumer experiences. But an LM, right, brings can bring bring these characters to life, can bring a brand to life, can develop an intimate relationship with consumers in a way that's more vibrant than just a static rule book. And so for that, what we do is we fine tune the models on the brand book and all the brand assets. We have customers create rules, but also, potentially, what are the hard and fast rules, and then what are not. So, if it's a one-off instance, potentially when you can break those rules as well to develop potentially more intimate relationship with the consumer. And so, yeah, and so that's really what we're focusing
Mhm.
on is these generative experience management platform, building that for brands. So it's less about managing the assets and managing the rules in the brand books, and more about managing the models that power uh, these generative experiences.
Give hypothetical kind of beginning scenario. They're starting to work out. Do you give them like a series of like test ads, A B testing, reaching enough scale to be able to validate this? I mean, I know one size doesn't fit all, but how would you recommend when people come in to be able to find those initial messages that really resonate? Or do you focus on a few because you've got this intelligence?
Yeah, great question. So we have a creative brief tool that generates ideas for customers to test. So customers will input the objectives of their campaigns, the audiences that they're targeting, and then we will suggest the platforms to advertise. We will suggest the copy and the imagery. We'll even generate sample mood board imagery and sample product photographs and designs for them. And then you utilize that to then power their advertising campaigns. And that creative brief then becomes the pillar, kind of rag, if you will, that then when you generate additional copy or generate additional imagery, it kind of aligns with kind of the broad heuristics that are determined in this creative brief. And so that's the next step is, once the customer has uploaded the brand information and connected the digital assets, upload their assets to our platform, and our models have been fine-tuned on their product and their brand style and their brand voice. And then we then generate creative briefs with platforms, messaging, and imagery and audience targeting, uh, kind of a blueprint for their campaign that the customers can then edit or regenerate, and then use that then to power the generative experiences.
AI agents for ads sound like it's only for big companies. Startups are a core part of Hikari's world at Omneky. Before, these kinds of tools and approaches to building brand were limited to those with big budgets and tons of people to execute it, right? Which is what makes AI agents and the idea of a generative experience management platform like Omneky's so intriguing. Startups can afford to iterate ads like they iterate code. Even hyper targeting is within reach. AI is a startup's game, and in advertising, the field is being leveled.
This hyper targeting benefits startups. It actually, like, hyper targeting isn't that necessarily that valuable for a big brand that already has incredible distribution. Everyone knows their brand. It's really that startup that's just starting that needs to find its first 100 customers, first 1,000 customers. That hyper targeting is incredibly valuable because that's how they can get their first customers. That's how they can start generating revenue and growing their business. And without that, it tends to not benefit. It tends to favor the companies that already have a brand established. They don't need to, personalize their brand because it's already kind of well known. And so, yes, regardless of what happens, I think creative is still the most important thing when it comes to advertising to marketers. It is the biggest lever for growth. I think in some ways the inability to do really fine targeting has benefited our business because creative is even more important now. It's the only lever that marketers have when it comes to driving higher performance because there's little, fewer levers when it comes to that hyper targeting of audiences.
How do you envision AI evolving, let's say just on a startup level, which is a great one, because the assumption when they have a lot of data and a lot of understanding, it's a little not easier, but there's a path already created. How do you work with startups to create like truly unique personalized content at scale rather than sort of slight variations, or they might get lazy and get into templated designs?
No, I think AI is actually more potentially like more valuable for startups than I think it is for incumbents. I mean, historically, the barriers for entry for running an effective advertising campaign has been so expensive. To create good content, you used to have to hire an expensive agency, creative agency, and to run an effective advertising campaign, you had to hire an expensive advertising agency, and you had to give them 10 to 20% of your marketing budget, or potentially even higher percentage of your advertising budget to kind of get your initial set of customers, or definitely, once you have your first set of customers, to kind of scale beyond that. And so, but generative AI lowers the barriers so that anybody with a compelling idea really could start advertising, start generating effective content with fairly flexible pricing, right? You could run you could run an effective advertising campaign potentially, right? As something as small as $100 budget, you can generate some effective creative and run that as an ad and get potentially, depending, get dozens of customers depending on the price point of your product, and then kind of scale from there. The entry fee, the entry ticket for
Right.
running an advertising campaign historically was much higher than that. And so I do think that technology generally, I feel like the arc of technology has always been kind of democratizing. It's empowered, given more power to people, and I think this technology is no different.
I guess digital asset management days are dead. Welcome to brand experience models. The old world of brand books, style guides, and scattered assets across channels is crumbling under its own complexity, and in its place, generative experience management. This isn't just a new term, it's a fundamental shift. AI models deliver brand experience across all channels. Think of it as your brand's operating system. The AI model understands your core identity, values, and voice, powering experiences that build genuine connection with your audience. This is generative brand management, and it's not just evolution, it's that corny word revolution.
Separately, I think it's also by embracing generative AI. We're working on AI agents for automating media buying and helping businesses be even more agile when it comes to launching and optimizing creative content because the current time turnaround times, where there's you want to probably reduce the humans in the loop so that the AI agents can be more agile and run 24/7 to take into account real-time signals in the market and generate new content and also stay up to date in terms of what's trending and really like real-time data about that target audience. And so embracing AI agents probably will give you a competitive advantage as well because your brand can be more nimble and more agile, and more effective in terms of developing a personal relationship with consumers. And so I think it's really those two things. I think, kind of the old school brand building is very important. I think you continue to build a brand, but at the same time really aggressively integrating Gen AI and AI agents into your workflow so you can be even more agile in terms of reacting to changes in the market and developing a more personal, intimate relationship with your customers.
I'd love your feedback on this. If I'm reading correctly, that you're working with AI agents it goes around the object. In your case, the ad is the object, and the intelligence around that ad in comparison to the other ads gives us suggestions to go forward, rather than the old model, which was the intelligence was built around the user, the human, and their automation tasks, which is fine. But in the end, they still had to get it from the data. So it's become very object ad driven and less relying on the human to do the organizing and the reporting. It sort of automates that element. Is that sort of hinting at what you're seeing with agents?
Absolutely. I mean, think about the inefficiencies of an organization today when it comes to creative, especially if you're a larger company. You tend to have a marketing department and a creative department, and those two departments don't necessarily aren't necessarily speaking the same language. The marketing team tends to be more involved in data, the creative team tends to be more involved in stories and the big idea, and the creative team doesn't have a lot of data regarding what types of stories are resonating. It's not necessarily something that they're trained in. It's not like most designers are trained to be data scientists or understand statistics, things like this. At the same time, a marketer is not a trained designer and does not understand brand building, does not understand aesthetics, does not really understand the realm of stories and building things that stories that resonate with people. And so the organizationally you have these kind of hierarchies of people, right? You have a manager
Mhm.
managing potentially other managers, managing people doing the work, and then you have the cross function messaging. And no wonder that advertising, it is actually a
Yeah,
wonder
yeah.
today that advertising is pretty effective, right? Because if you think of like the layers that need to happen, and all the mistakes that can happen in every row of communication between these different teams, different levels within those teams, it is truly a wonder that advertising, that it is as effective as it is today. And I think there's one reason why people are kind of upset at ads, because ads, sometimes don't produce the best content, partly because it's kind of created in this somewhat of a highly complicated structure with lots of people in the loop. In the future, I think an AI system will be way more efficient, right? An AI system will in real time incorporate data from marketing into the generation process, and you won't have to have cross team communication and layers of people communicating with each other to execute an idea. It'd be in real time, and there'll be less context lost between that turnaround cycle. It'll be done faster, it'll be done cheaper, it'll be done more effectively. The content will be more personalized, and so ultimately, I think that system will win out. An AI system um, that orchestrates all this will win out. I think there's
Okay.
two schools of thoughts when it comes to AI, right? There's the co-pilot school of thought, and then there's kind of the autopilot school of thought, the full self-driving school of thought.
Yeah.
And I think right now we're kind of still in the kind of co-pilot state where there's very much a human in the loop, and I think that's fair because
Yeah.
the AI isn't good enough yet to really be full self-driving. But you're really starting to see elements of full self-driving AI being more effective.
And finally, imagine a world where, as a business, you just send your budget and your audience, your idea, everything else is handled by AI. Mark Zuckerberg of Meta just actually announced that earlier this year, talking about the future of meta advertising. So, do brands want a single platform to be their advertising AI agent? Or is that thinking too small? And can we do better? I saw Meta's Mark Zuckerberg came out, and this is his statement that I'd love your just opinion. Not like he says, our AI, our ad AI, all you have to do is bring us your budget and your audience. We'll do the rest.
Well, let me just say that it's not the role that advertisers want. The advertisers do not want to delegate the brand to Meta, right? They want to manage their brand. They want to control their brand. We live in a world where no single advertising platform is a monopoly, and no
Right.
two advertising platforms are no longer. It's not a duopoly world either. And so brands need to think, and consumers are engaging with brands not just on Meta, but they're engaging with brand. The consumers are engaging with their brands on YouTube and TikTok and Pinterest and Snapchat and all the various streaming platforms, Netflix, Disney Plus, etc. Advertisements on all those platforms, display networks, gaming platforms, and so what advertisers will seek is for an AI agent to orchestrate their brand across those platforms. So that's really where we come in, and I think that that is actually an area where AI agents will potentially be more effective, because again, an AI agent that can see the performance of every single advertising platform, the return on ad spend, incremental revenue gain across all the firms, and the real time adjust budgets. An agent driven world is the world I think that we are entering, because as a business, I think it's the value props are so much straightforward. You have such benefits in terms of cost and efficacy that I think every business will end up embracing agents in the areas that it makes sense.
How can people reach out to Omneky, find you all, and be able to contact you after this?
Yeah, so follow us on socials at Omnikey on X, on Meta, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube. You can follow me as well on socials at HI Senju on X and on LinkedIn. Hikari Senju. Sign up for a free trial on our website, omnikey.com. And yeah, just looking forward to connecting